Hello again. I'm still Dan, the Chief Scientific Officer at Cybernetica, and today we have our second edition of our research podcast, still tentatively called Science Will Make You Happy. Today we have picked a rather complicated topic to discuss, but I feel we'll do just fine. Here with me today we have Jan Villemson, a senior researcher at Cybernetica.
Hello.
Jan has been working on post-quantum cryptography for how long now?
For a few years.
And that few is more like 7 or something.
Yeah, the first reports, I think, were written in 2017, something like that.
Yes, so that's already quite a long time. So first of all, I guess we need to explain people, first of all, quick reminder, what is cryptography?
Let's start from where and why we need cryptography in the first place.
Great idea.
Because cryptography is something that you don't necessarily see. Mm-hmm. So what you see is solutions, you see services, you see apps, you see websites, you see stuff like that, right? And there are reasons why you need these websites or apps. You need some services that they provide. You need your web banking, you need your child benefits, you need your online streaming for your entertainment and so on and so forth, right? And the thing is that these services come with some requirements. So for example, we as a society want to give child benefits only to those people who need them. For instance, you need to have a child first. So we want to give these services to entitled people, right? Mm-hmm. You may have requirements of confidentiality. When you talk to your web bank, you don't want necessarily your wife to know how much money do you have. And so on and so forth. So there are like certain requirements, and you need some sort of technology to achieve these requirements. So the requirement of confidentiality is typically achieved by encryption. And this is where the cryptography comes in. So you need some secrets that are called keys that you can use to encrypt this communication in one end, your web browser, for example, so that the information will reach the other end, the web bank, for example, in a way that nobody in the meantime can understand what it is. That's one thing. Or if you need to prove that you are who you are, then you would typically use something like digital signatures, which means you again need some sort of secret that is bound to you. Mm-hmm. This is called your signature key. And you sign your documents, you send them away, and somebody who is reading them can then make some sense of these documents and hopefully be convinced that, yeah, you were the one who signed them.
Great explanation. To be honest, I have a bit of background in cryptography myself. I would say that we went very human with this. These are very human considerations for why we need cryptography, and it's good that we can start with that. I guess it's fair to say that cryptography has lots of assumptions, and you always have to know that cryptography is not like universal. It works because certain mathematics is considered to be hard, or certain hardware is considered to be...
Yeah, there are different kinds of assumptions. Yeah, for example, these keys have to come from somewhere. Yeah. So somebody has to generate them, and somebody has to generate them in a way, for example, that only you and your web bank have access to this key, because otherwise we wouldn't get this property of secrecy, right? If somebody else has it, well, then they might intercept their communication. So indeed, we need certain requirements from these systems. And indeed, there are certain assumptions that we need to make, for example, for these digital signatures to work, yes.
Mm-hmm. Well, fortunately here in Estonia, we've been working on this for 20 plus years, so we've gone through a lot of the growing pains and gotten a lot of this to work already. But there's a new interesting thing coming, and now we need to explain people what is post-quantum cryptography. It sounds like something from science fiction, but today it most certainly is not anymore. So what does post-quantum mean?
Yes, we probably again need to take a step back and look a little bit into the history. So the current cryptographic algorithms that we use, for instance, for digital signatures or key exchange, they were invented sometime in 1970s, 1980s, something like that. And they rely on certain mathematical assumptions like factoring large integers is hard, or computing discrete logarithms is hard, stuff like that. And sometime in early 1980s, physicists figured out that in principle, it is possible to build a computing device based on quantum effects. So yeah, these papers go to somewhere in 1982, something like that. One of these fathers of computation, quantum computation is Nobel Prize winner Richard Feynman. But there were a few other people who independently came to this idea. There is one obscure Russian brochure that is also often cited, also from early 1980s. So this thing was conceptually invented like a couple of times in early 1980s. And then people started looking more deeply into this. This is still your regular computation paradigm. Quantum computing can't compute anything that a regular computer can't. But the thing is, it's more efficient. And it's exponentially more efficient at certain computational tasks. And in early 1990s, it turned out that unfortunately breaking some of these mathematical hardness assumptions underlying our classical cryptography is also among these problems that the quantum computer can potentially more easily solve. Right. And this is the root of all problems we are facing these days.
To simplify, there is a hypothetical device that we do not have yet.
We do, but we do have rather small examples of it.
So tiny quantum computers.
We have still having something that is relatively small, not yet capable of breaking practical key sizes. That's the way cryptographers put it. There are relatively small quantum computers that already can do something useful. It's not just that they don't break our everyday crypto yet.
Yes, so the lies to little children version of post-quantum cryptography is that there might be a quantum computer large enough to break the cryptography you use today for internet banking and talking to the government or digital signatures. Essentially, very good. So this and this post-quantum is like something that is cryptography that's supposed to be safe after that.
Exactly. So this is the kind of cryptography that we don't know yet how to break with quantum computers. So the classical crypto we do know. The post-quantum crypto, well, it's a general term. It's a general term to many cryptographic algorithms that use quite a few different algebraic base constructions, and for these we don't currently know how to break them efficiently with a quantum computer.
That's good to know. It's technically possible that there could be a quantum computer that breaks the post-quantum algorithms we know today.
It's more like people will figure out better algorithms to run on quantum computers. So what quantum computer can do or cannot do, I'm not a physicist, so don't ask me about that. But my understanding is that on the physical level, it's pretty well understood what are the elementary operations that the quantum computer can do. And now the question is how you compose more complex algorithms or computing devices of these elementary things that the quantum computer can efficiently do. And the research area is still very much in development. Both building the quantum computers and writing software for these quantum computers are still areas of very active research.
Well, as is the development of post-quantum cryptography. Just, I think, a month or two ago, I read a rather famous cryptographer saying, it was on the internet, that post-quantum cryptography has given cryptographers something interesting to do again, because it's mathematically sort of elegant. Some of the schemes are mathematically beautiful, and it's exciting to work on. It's not so much engineering, but it's sort of exploration of mathematics again.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. There is still a lot to do in the classical crypto as well. So you can always find a new problem setting. You can try to be more efficient in classical realm as well. So classical cryptography has by no means disappeared. It's still there. But indeed, post-quantum cryptography has given lots of new air to breathe for cryptographers. Lots of interesting problems to work on.
All right, cryptographers care. why should everybody else care? So is this quantum computer happening? When it will happen? So how long?
This is the $1 million question, and you know that.
It's likely more than $1 million, I guess.
Yes. So what is happening is, of course, there is steady progress made when building these quantum computers. So every few months we read a new announcement by some large company. Well, IBM is building. Alibaba is building, Meta is building, Microsoft is building. So there are many specialized companies that are building quantum computers, and they're still trying to figure out what is the correct physical hardware, because there are several candidates for this best quantum effect carrier. So there is still a lot of work to do in figuring out that, and the hard piece to figure out is actually how do you make this construction scalable. So we know how to build quantum computers of a few hundred, perhaps a few thousand quantum bits, as they are called these days, which is still by no means large enough to break standard cryptography. But it may happen that physicists at some point figure out how to scale this thing very efficiently and make million quantum bits, a billion quantum bits, something like this.
Because the computers we have today in our phones, watches, and laptops, they are already can do large things, and the quantum computers are still at a few hundred.
Yes, well, the thing is that the classical bit and quantum bit are not really that one-to-one comparable. So
Good to know.
A few quantum bits potentially can compute pretty crazy things. And again, you will have to separate the physical quantum bit that is carried by some photon or whatnot, and a bit that you can actually use in computation. Well, the trick is that the quantum bits or the quantum bit carriers are physically very unstable. So the quantum is very, very, very small. It's basically a small quantum of energy that is out there somewhere. It fluctuates, it's waves, whatever it does. It's very hard to control it. You can control it for perhaps, I don't know, a microsecond, something like that. And during this lifespan, maybe milliseconds, I don't know, don't quote me on that. But during that very, very short lifespan, you already need to perform all this computation. And it may happen that this specific quantum bit does not survive this long. So the way you approach this problem is you use many quantum bits and hope that at least some of them will survive for the duration of this computation. And you would use what computer scientists call error correction. So this is done in classical communications as well. Your mobile phone talking to the base station. Well, there is also noise. So in order to survive this noise, they will also use error correction. So they will actually send more bits than absolutely necessary. And a similar thing is happening in quantum computers as well, on a different scale. So you will perhaps need 1,000 physical bits for one logical bit, but that's again very much area of development. I recently heard that there is a group of researchers who claims that they've built 50 logical bits out of 300 quantum bits. If true, this would be very, very interesting. This would perhaps show us the path towards scaling this thing up efficiently. We will have to wait and see.
Okay, there's at some point, and this doesn't seem correct or believable, is the myth was shared that a quantum computer looks at all the possible solution at once and then picks the right one. This is likely not the case, right?
I don't think so. Yeah.
Yeah, this is a bit of myth-busting service right there. Fair enough. So physicists are working on it. There's companies, there's startups,
There's a lot of money poured into this thing.
And they need to justify that money by showing results, even if there aren't really any sometimes. So there's quite a bit of scaring people with quantum computers. So realistically, I know there's not a number. Nobody's willing to say that it comes in 5, 10, 20, 50 years.
Well, it comes in 15 years, and this has been said for 25 years. So
precisely. So there is what I saw was a good graph which said that if you asked a number of people like in a TV show, that what year do you think a quantum computer will come in, then it was like a parable.
Yeah, it's a kind of a grayscale
Yes.
or orange scale, whatever it
and
was.
the
in
average
paper.
was in 10, 20 years. So
And I think it said that many people thought that in 10, 15 years we have a 50% chance of having such a computer. So it had many parameters.
That would break, for example, the Estonian digital signatures, or let's break the ID card again.
Or some other classical crypto algorithm like RSA 2 kilobits, which is like a standard benchmark for these things, more or less.
Fair enough. All right. So it's a threat that is sort of coming, but it's not here now. So why are we worried about it now?
Well, the thing is that the data that we're trying to protect, either like in the context of confidentiality or authenticity, it typically has what I would call, for instance, in case of confidentiality, I like to call it confidentiality horizon.
Mm-hmm.
So when you try to protect some data, you typically need to think for how long does this data need to stay secret from someone. And there are kinds of data for which, for instance, legislation states that they need to be kept secret like 30 years, something like that. Mm-hmm. Or your medical data needs to stay confidential for X years after you die, or stuff like that. So there are confidentiality horizons that are pretty significant. Mm-hmm. And which may be longer than this X date when we will have sufficiently powerful quantum computer. So this is a reason why you perhaps want to care about these things today.
So if I have stuff that I need to keep secret for sure beyond 15 or 20 years, then today I should very actively start looking at whether I can encrypt them with post-quantum cryptography.
Yes. But this is like data specific. Mm-hmm. So it's not the case that all kinds of data is that confidential. So think about auctions, for example, sealed bid auctions.
Yeah.
So you want your bid to stay secret for the duration of the auction.
Yes.
Which is like minutes, maybe hours, maybe days, but that's about it. And after the winner has been called, well, then there is not much point in keeping your bid secret anymore. Okay, perhaps you argue that you want to keep your strategy of bidding secret, but that's beside the point. So it's not the case that all kinds of data has this long confidentiality horizons, but some data do. Mm-hmm. So you would actually need to run sort of risk analysis to figure out whether your data is subject to be broken.
And when we do risk analysis of security of any kind of system, then at least the way I have been taught, including by you, is you have to consider the attacker and the attacker's capability.
And motivation.
And cost. Mm-hmm. So currently we speak about this quantum computer as if everybody will have them as iPhones, but this is likely not going to be the case.
Yes. So as building a quantum computer will, for the foreseeable future, remain very expensive. Running it will also remain pretty expensive. Mm-hmm. So again, you need to very well control these quantum bits, and this is going to be hard, even in the foreseeable future. So yes, there have been some estimates trying to estimate how much would it actually cost to run a quantum computer for any sort of interesting computation. Mm-hmm. And again, this breaking cryptography is by no means the only interesting kind of computation. So one quite likely scenario of the future is that quantum computers will never be used to break cryptography, because it simply does not make sense economically. So there are many more interesting optimization problems, some pharmaceutical analysis problems, stuff like that, that quantum computers will solve much earlier. Mm-hmm. And perhaps there is much more money to be made in pharma or what. Perhaps there is.
So it could be that breaking the Estonian ID card or smart ID signatures or whatever might cost tens of millions for a single key.
Exactly. So just breaking one signature key, yes, would probably cost, I don't know, tens, hundreds of millions of dollars, something like that. So yeah, and again, you would need to run some sort of a risk analysis. So who are you? So is your key worth of breaking? So I don't know if you're a manager of a large company that runs multi-billion-dollar operations, and your signature may be used to transfer money, like your billions, to Bahamas or whatnot. Sorry for the viewers in Bahamas. So that may be worth of it, but for the Joe average, with very high probability, it's not really worth of it.
So it's not really, yes. That's a good point. It gives us some solace, but at the same time, when we, shifting gears now, we understood the problem. We understood that some institutions, potentially some governmental institutions that have long-term confidentiality requirements, they are worried. But also what I see is that there are a lot of other people still moving to post-quantum cryptography, and they don't have this problem much. So Chrome, a popular web browser, has moved to post-quantum cryptography. Signal, similarly, not as popular as WhatsApp or Telegram or some of the funnier ones.
Cloudflare.
Cloudflare, yes, a popular content delivery network. Apple has promised that iMessage will be post-quantum by the end of 2024. So they're all doing this today for communications between me and you. So why is this happening?
Yes, so the service providers that you mentioned, I would classify them as infrastructure providers. So they are providers of communication infrastructure. So Apple, Signal, Chrome, you're using them to transfer this sort of information. So my take is that they are getting ready in case some very confidential information gets transferred via this means. So for instance, yes, you're the manager of a multi-billion-dollar company, and you want to make like post-quantum secure signatures. So you have to realize that the infrastructure that you're using actually has to support this. So this is not enough that you're just having like one device that can, for instance, give the signatures. You will also need the transportation of the signature. You will also need some infrastructure on the other side of this communication. So somebody needs to verify your post-quantum signature. They would need to have access to your public key, the authentic version of your public key, which means we're talking about public key infrastructure of some sort that has to be there. And so this is like kinds of services that these service providers are building, in my understanding.
Migrating today, so that one day when all the service providers come, then so customers come, then the infrastructure
they
providers
will be ready. And then because you will have to understand that none of this happens overnight.
No.
So there is probably quite a long transition period, lasting for years. So these infrastructure components are like getting ready for this time.
So interestingly, Cloudflare again is, I'm just bringing it up as an example of someone who has strongly supported moving towards post-quantum cryptography. There are many others. Cloudflare is not the only one. But one thing they have is they have an interesting radar which measures how much post-quantum secure channels they see on their network. And I just had a look again today, and based on the day, it fluctuates between 16 to 20% of their endpoints are post-quantum.
Which is pretty good.
This is actually surprisingly good, and all it took was Google Chrome migrating to post-quantum as default. So it might be that this migration will be easier than IP version 6 for those network engineers among you who still haven't supported my IP version 6. Then post-quantum will be easier.
But you will have to understand that this Google's transition to post-quantum support didn't happen overnight either.
No, of course
So
not.
Google has been experimenting with the support of post-quantum algorithms for like 5 years at least already. So they had an earlier experimental support to New Hope, for example, quite a few years back.
In New Hope was not the Star Wars movie.
No. New Hope was one of the candidates for post-quantum crypto standard that is even deprecated by now. It didn't make it to this standardization final round.
Okay.
But yeah, they just wanted to get a grip of it, what it would mean to transition significant infrastructure components as web browsers are to post-quantum crypto.
Right, but that Google's example is, I think, very interesting to some of our listeners because they were early adopters. They took a post-quantum algorithm, but then they had to throw everything away because it turned out that this algorithm wasn't going to make it. So what do we know today that Google didn't know then? What has happened in the meantime?
Well, I guess the prototype back then, they probably meant it as a throwaway prototype.
All right.
Because they knew that the path is going to be long and winding. Well, the thing is that the new post-quantum algorithms are not really drop-in replacements to pre-quantum algorithms. So they have pretty different characteristics. The keys are a different format algebraically. The cryptograms, the signatures are completely different. You can't fit them into standard packages as low-level packages as easily, and so on and so forth. So it was apparent already like 5-10 years ago that this transition process is going to be pretty complicated. So I guess Google's earlier attempt was to get an idea of what is waiting for them.
Right, but the standards thing, I think this summer one of the big news was that the American National Institute of Standards, NIST,
and Technology,
thank you very much, published 3 standards of post-quantum algorithms. And for the world it mattered. So why does it matter that NIST publishes a standard, that the Americans do this?
Well, first of all, because NIST is one of the largest standardization bodies that has a long-standing history of standardizing cryptographic algorithms. So this history is again long and colorful, let's put it this way. But the recent standardization efforts have been actually very well perceived by the international community. So back in 1980s, 1990s, they tried to develop crypto standards in-house. And it turned out that perhaps they had something up their sleeves that they did not show to the rest of the world. So there are several classical examples. Let's not go in there, but they learned, and starting from the advanced encryption standard (AES) standard process, they actually ran it very openly. So they had an open international call. Everybody was allowed to step forward, say, I have this proposal for the next symmetric encryption standard. And the rest of the world took a look at it. They had several rounds of feedback, selection, prototyping, whatnot. And this AES was, let's say, the first well-perceived standard of NIST. They have repeated it ever since. They repeated this with hash functions, for example. And now the post-quantum crypto standard development process, they basically took the blueprint of what they had done before and repeated it with post-quantum crypto. And this far, they're doing pretty good job at it, I would say.
I was rather young when AES was standardized.
Early 2000s, something like that.
Yes, but I didn't pay much attention to international cryptography standardization back then. However, if I'm not mistaken now, then a European algorithm actually won in the sense that
yes, it was developed by a group of Belgian cryptographers.
Yes, so an American standards organization through an open process decided that some cryptography out of Belgium, Europe, is it actually, I think Radboud University, is it Belgian?
I don't.
Yeah, we have to check. I think it. Okay. Yeah, so it's pardon me for not looking that up before. It just came to me. This is something that shows it's sort of, that's supposed to show that it's sort of trustworthy a bit. I guess the American researchers also tried to shoot it down reasonably well.
Absolutely.
And
I mean for this NIST post-quantum crypto standardization process that has been running since 2016, by the way, it was the first announced. And I would say that most of the competing algorithms have been developed by international research teams. So you can't really these days say anymore it's a European standard, it's an American standard. It's most of these were like collaborative efforts between Japanese, Chinese, all kinds of cryptographers.
It sounds kind of nice. So it's not just we're trusting the American Standards Authority, we're trusting a lot of researchers funded by European money or by some other countries, governments, to get a joint agreement on how to exchange information securely. That sounds very idealistic and nice, actually,
yes.
considering.
To an extent it does. And of course, this is not by no means the only standardization effort that is going on. So this is like the American one, we could say the biggest one. Europeans are also trying their best. So there are the agencies in Germany, in France, they are also looking at all these candidates independently. They have their own crypto people looking at this. And it is possible that Germans, for example, will standardize some other algorithms.
Right.
As far as I know, I think they're looking at Frodo for key exchange, which was also a NIST competitor. It didn't make it to the final round, but I think it was in the next to the final round. So this is again also considered to be a good algorithm by the international community. I think it was some performance metrics that the Americans didn't like, something like that.
Fair enough.
But it is still possible that other standardization bodies will also standardize some algorithms. So and maybe a word on standardization. So standardization is actually a nice to have thing, right? So it's not a compulsory thing. So you don't have to follow the standard, but it's good for interoperability if you do. So that's the general ideology of standards as far as I understand. So Americans say that yes, we have run this process. We think these algorithms are good for international communication because we want the world to be able to talk to each other over the internet. And so if the talking to each other is what you want, then perhaps this is what you can use.
Well, Chrome is a good example. I guess Chrome is using one of the standardized algorithms, I'm rather sure.
Most probably.
Yes, so it's a lot of people talk to each other using Chrome's cryptography, whether they are actually talking to Instagram or Facebook or
their own government
AliExpress or their government. They're actually talking to someone over post-quantum channels and, hoping that these service providers are also talking to each other over post-quantum channels then. All right, so we are in a much better place than Google was back in the day with New Hope, because these days the cryptography, post-quantum cryptography that we're deploying, we actually expect it to stick around for longer time periods now. Right. And it seems to work, and folks have not come up with reasonable attacks. I remember there was a bit of a anxious moment for a while when a certain researcher came up with an idea that maybe he can also break lattice cryptography using a quantum computer, but that turned out to be his theorems didn't work.
We haven't mentioned lattices yet. Lattices are one of these algebraic-based constructions that people use and that are, I would say, very popular right now because they tend to give good trade-offs between various aspects of performance. And yes, this is what is happening constantly, of course. So cryptographers are still looking at these things as they are looking at AES as well, still, even after 25 years of more or less using it. So, and this is a natural part of the process. So all the crypto algorithms that we have are only as strong as the best known attack against it, right? So in order to be convinced that they are strong, we actually have to attack them like more or less constantly, and people do. And of course these sorts of ideas and claims are to be expected. So the concrete claim that you're talking about, I think it was the Chinese researcher who uploaded his analysis to one of these public ePrint servers, exactly for the international research community to look at it, and people did. They pointed out the failure, but they recognized that the guy actually had pretty good ideas. So and this is how like scientific progress works. So somebody has an idea, he puts it forward. people look at it, say, well, it doesn't work here, but perhaps we can patch it. So this is like Fermat's last theorem was proved, for example. Took a while, but now people are like convinced that it's true. So this is how things work.
Yeah, that's totally fine. But I think as we have to, when we started talking about attacks, it's fair to say that attacks exist, but that does not mean that things are insecure. The fact that we know how to attack AES doesn't mean we can actually do it in practice.
Exactly. So this is the performance part. So of course you know how to attack AES. It's just that the best known attack is so ridiculously expensive, mostly in terms of time, that you would need to wait until the end of our known universe and beyond. And this is why we say that using AES is perfectly fine, because there is no realistic way of attacking it. And this holds true for all the other crypto algorithms as well.
Yeah, again, that was exactly what I was going to ask. That the post-quantum algorithms that have been standardized today, that we do not, in a way, we don't know better attacks against them than we do for AES, which is used for all our internet banking and secure transport.
And there are like NIST, when NIST searched for standardized algorithms, they defined certain levels of security as well, which I think were like in comparison to the amount of work you need to do to break certain instances of AES, for example. So
okay, fair enough. That's also rather assuring. Although, as we know, this is a new research domain in the grand scheme of humanity, in the sense that post-quantum schemes have been worked on until then, when the whole concept... when was the concept invented, you know?
You mean concept
post-quantum cryptography, when it was named.
Okay. Probably... I think people figured out that they need to do something already in 1990s.
Okay.
I'm not sure if they called it post-quantum cryptography.
Right.
But that we will need certain new crypto algorithms, it was already clear. And very interestingly, already some candidates were available back then. So the earliest post-quantum safe algorithms that we have today go back to 1970s actually.
Okay, it was later found that they might be...
It was So the crypto system was proposed. I'm talking about Macaulay's crypto system. Yes, that was proposed almost on the same year as RSA, for example. It wasn't standardized back then because it wasn't very efficient.
Right.
It was a very interesting and very elegant theoretical concept. And when people figured out in 1990s that they need something to stand against quantum computers, they looked at this crypto system and said, we didn't know how to break this. And Macaulay's crypto system is actually still one of the competitors in the NIST standardization process. So even though NIST declared the 3 final round winners, the process is still ongoing.
There will be more post-quantum.
Pretty surely will be more post-quantum algorithms, at least 3 or 4 or something like that, because NIST also wants to diversify the selection of algebraic-based constructions. So out of the 3 algorithms that are already standardized, and one that is probably going to be standardized next year, so we'll have like 4 final round algorithms. 3 of the 4 are what we call lattice-based.
Right.
And this is what worries NIST a little bit. So
some mathematicians come up with some efficient new properties on lattices.
The next Chinese postdoc comes and uploads an e-print that holds up.
Yes.
We will need alternatives. And that is what NIST is still going to work on, and for a few years, maybe a decade, something like that. So they will be running this for quite a while.
Right. But we see that there is... it's fair to talk about all these risks. It's fair to be open about that. Cryptography has always been an ongoing discipline, developing all the time.
It's an arms race.
In a way, between the attackers and the defenders, as most of security all the time. However, still, we now have these big international efforts like U.S. government earmarking $7 billion to transition government systems to post-quantum by 2035. So something is now happening. I guess for Americans it was easy. They made these standards happen. Now they have something to work with. So now they're starting the transition. So before we start looking at how do people from normal everyday users to governments move there, actually, let's look at the topic that I have also heard about quite a bit and have looked at quite a bit, which is quantum cryptography, which is not the same as post-quantum
It's a
cryptography.
completely different thing.
It's a completely different thing. We should make the distinction here. Quantum cryptography is something to do, it's closer to quantum computers than cryptography.
Yes, the post-quantum cryptography is running on our classical computers.
Yeah.
So your smartphone, your smartwatch is able to run post-quantum crypto algorithms
Today.
On the present hardware.
Yes.
It's just that it's hard to break this crypto, even if you have a quantum computer.
Yes.
Quantum computing now, or quantum cryptography now, is assuming that you actually have a quantum device.
Yes.
That would run the encryption or key exchange routines for you. And this is a very big assumption. So again, as I said, these quantum devices are not very cheap. They have significant physical limitations. So if we're talking about quantum cryptography, I guess we're still talking about quantum key exchange these days, right?
Key distribution, yes.
Not much else. And yeah, you need some physical layers to run these quants through, in forms of photons, whatnot. And again, you will see physical effects that your quants will decay over this transition, which means they're not running very far. I understand that the current state of quantum key distribution is you could do it over like 50-60 kilometers or something.
I think
that.
it's long. It's
but maybe it's increasing.
Longer. Yeah,
maybe
it has
increasing.
increased. And I have heard about papers trying to use satellites for it, although it
Right.
sort of breaks me a little bit. How do you control the flow of these quants over that? But I'm not a physicist.
You will probably need to send a lot
Yeah.
of them and again run some sort of error correction on top of them, something like that.
So that's perfectly doable. There are applications where this makes a lot of sense. You just have to consider that the main key difference is that quantum cryptography, quantum key distribution requires new hardware, and post-quantum cryptography is a software upgrade.
Exactly.
That's, I guess,
Yes.
the main distinction. And it might be that you have some specific cases where you have the infrastructure ready and you can do quantum key distribution. Although you'll actually encrypt the data with AES anyway later.
I guess so. Yes. You will agree upon
key.
a classical symmetric key.
Yes.
We haven't been talking about differences between symmetric and asymmetric key distribution here. We said the post-quantum crypto is about asymmetric keys.
Yes, that's an important thing to
that's
say.
an
I
important
forgot
thing
it
to say.
myself, and this is a good place to say that.
Yeah. But the symmetric key algorithms are not under threat as far as we know currently from quantum computers. So that means that it's still perfectly okay to use stuff like AES.
Yeah.
With 256-bit keys, for example, and these 256 bits would be what you would agree on this quantum key exchange channel.
Right. So this got a bit technical, but we'll get back on track.
I guess that's
now.
the idea.
Yeah, that's the idea. Some of you might appreciate the details, so that's why we're giving it to you. So next up, we're now actually talking about what to do. How do you migrate? So I'm a user. I have my phone. I have a laptop. I do my work on. What do I need to do to migrate to post-quantum cryptography?
So for some applications, perhaps things will happen under the hood so that you don't really need to do much else beyond your standard software upgrades. So if you, again, let's take this Google Chrome. If you keep your Google Chrome updated, then there is a very good chance that you have this capability already today. But again, so this gives you some infrastructure components, but infrastructure is like more than that. For example, if you're talking about digital signatures, you will need some device to control your signature key. So is it an ID card? Is it mobile ID, SIM, what not? If you are managing your keys in some sort of a hardware. Again, a chip card or an HSM or something like that, that is running specifically designed hardware, then that's going to be more challenging. Then simple software upgrade perhaps is not enough. At some point, if we're going to have like post-quantum ID cards, you would probably need to walk to the police and border guard or Selver or whatever we are walking to these days to obtain your post-quantum enabled ID card. Of course, this presumes that there is a vendor who is able to provide these post-quantum algorithm-bearing chip cards, which is, again, something that is still in development. Again, because the standards only appeared like a few months ago, like in early August or something.
If you're looking at this later than 2024, then all these things might already exist. So we
this is going to be history.
Salute you, future us.
Yes, but this means that now the chip card vendors, for example, have the final versions of algorithms, so they can start working on these hardware tokens. Well, the thing is, because the hardware tokens are so expensive to change, we only have one shot to get it right. More or less, that's the thing. So it's going to be very, very expensive to develop, very, very expensive to certify, for example. And then me and you and all the other end users will have to like be interested enough to be able to pay for this in the end of the day. So that's going to be quite a challenging process. So we don't expect post-quantum ID cards to happen in a year, for example. It's going to take a few.
Likely. Very likely that, yes. So I know when I talk to some of the international industry making post-quantum hardware, then I haven't yet met anyone who has directly said that they are working on a post-quantum capable like SIM card or
smart
chip
cards,
card, smart card. Yeah. Although I'm sure that there are those who are working on this.
I guess HSMs, like hardware security modules, are happening, but that's mostly because they are much closer to our average PCs.
And they're expensive anyway.
They are expensive, right? But they're internally they're just a PC with fancy protections against physical attacks and stuff like that.
Correct.
But they are running your quite regular CPUs and stuff like that.
That's true. So some pieces of hardware will move to post-quantum more quickly.
Yes.
But again, as already said, our laptops and phones for today already can do this anyway.
They can do this, yes.
So next up, you're not just an end user anymore. Now you are running a service, a website. You have an online shop. Do you need to do something, and when?
Yes, you probably do, yeah. And if you want to accept people coming with post-quantum authentication protocols, then your website, your web server needs to be capable of handling this. So again, you would need some public infrastructure components. You would need something called key certificates. So this is again getting a bit technical, but essentially, your public key by which you are recognized by the service provider will have to come in a specific container, a secure container, again, a signed container, which we call a certificate. And somebody needs to produce these certificates, for example. So there needs to be an authority who is capable of giving out these certificates. And so all the infrastructure somehow needs to be built all like at the same time. So there needs to be like this public infrastructure side, also the service consumer side, service provider side, all of them need to transition. And so that's quite challenging, I would say.
But not all of this is up to everyday web shop owner. Some of this is like the government's job,
or the CA, the certificate authority.
Yes.
Like in Estonia, we have this SK ID solutions that probably will need to be in the forefront of this at some point, providing certain standard infrastructure components like OCSP responders and whatnot.
Yeah, and internationally, all the organizations controlling which websites are considered secure and trustworthy, all them need to move to post-quantum realm as well. And this is an ongoing process. Some have, some are still going to do that. So,
but the service providers probably at least they would need to write the new configuration to their services.
Yes.
So this probably needs to happen. Yeah.
Reconfigure your Nginx or whichever web
Apache
server.
Or whatever.
I don't. Are people still using Apache?
They are.
Likely they are. So this is something that you need to do a little bit more work if you're that. So this sort of brings us to one of the more complex systems, complex cryptography, e-government. E-government, especially in places like Estonia and many other places around the world that have built up significant infrastructure that use more than just secure transport. So they will have a harder time migrating. So, for example, and this will be slightly Estonia specific, but given that fortunately already many countries around the world have embraced similar technologies, then it will also apply to you as well. So X-Road, we have this platform which agencies, authorities use, hospitals, to exchange trustworthy transactions with each other, authenticated, can be upheld as evidence in court. So if I had to measure the complexity between 1 to 10, then how hard will it be to migrate X-Road to post-quantum?
Yeah, again, so X-Road is an infrastructure. And it contains several components, and it again has cryptography in several places in the infrastructure. So there is authentication. So these servers that exchange data, they need to know who the other participant in this conversation is. So they need to have their certificates. Again, if we want these certificates to be post-quantum, then somebody needs to issue these certificates. And now probably in different instantiations of X-Road. I don't know how this works these days. My knowledge is back from 10 years, but I would imagine that there are several ways you could try to rely on your national PKI, for example, for this, or you could run a dedicated PKI for this infrastructure for X-Road in some other country. So this gives you an idea of what you need to do. So if you're running a PKI service just for this instance of X-Road, then it is under your control. It's your ecosystem, and you probably let's say you're running X-Road as an isolated piece of infrastructure. Then I would say that it's pretty straightforward or not that difficult to transition, because all the infrastructure components are under your control. So you can you as the manager of this X-Road instance, you can upload a new version of your in X-Road CA, for example, that starts giving out post-quantum certificates. You can roll out software updates to your security servers that can start accepting connections based on these post-quantum crypto algorithms. So of course you need like contingency if you don't want to take down everything and then boot up. Then you probably need some hybrid stages. But in general, I would assume that transitioning isolated instances of ecosystems is not going to be that hard. But if you need to interface your X-Road with national PKI, for example, then you will face like bigger problems.
You need to do you need a post-quantum PKI. So
Exactly.
This is a good place to mention that there is Cybernetica also makes a sort of X-Road compatible system called UXP, the Unified Exchange Platform, which is in use as a similar system in several governments around the world. And for that, we actually did research reports suggesting how you migrate that to post-quantum. And there we considered something, I remembered because you mentioned hybrid schemes. So what's the importance of hybrid schemes in post-quantum cryptography?
Yeah, that's exactly for the transition period. So when part of your infrastructure is willing to accept post-quantum crypto and part is still in the process of upgrading, so they're still running like this pre-quantum. So you want like all of these parties to be able to talk to each other. So this means, yeah, for example, if you're accepting like authentication requests from certain clients, and well, in crypto protocols, typically there is the first step is agreeing on the cipher suits. So you tell me which ciphers you support, I tell you which ciphers I support, and if it turns out that the client is not yet capable of supporting post-quantum, then perhaps we want to fall back to pre-quantum. So this is an example of a hybrid scheme. There are like more complex instances of this, of course.
Well, back in the day, again, not that much back in the day, but I remember there being lots of actual attacks against people's infrastructure because of these downgrades. Sort of asking that, oh, I can't do post-quantum. Please talk pre-quantum with me so I could break it.
Yeah, I guess a classical example is GSM.
Yes.
That is running an A5 family of algorithms. And
GSM being the mobile cellular mobile network.
Second generation cellular mobile, that is still very much up and running these days. And there is this crypto algorithms A50, A51, A52, A53, where A50 is no encryption.
Yes.
And one of the attacks was to impersonate a client device that says, oh, I don't know anything except for A50, can we please use that?
Which is no crypto at all.
Which is no crypto at all.
Yes.
That's an example of a downgrade attack.
Yes, and when we say crypto, then crypto means cryptography.
Mm-hmm.
Right. All right. So we can migrate X-Road and UXP users to post-quantum. It's a bit of a, if there's PKI, it's certification authorities, then it sort of seems doable and that
was the authentication part. Well, there is also an encryption part, right? Which you would also need to take care. But encryption again is typically what is happening within the ecosystem.
Yes.
So
yes. It's more control
that's more controllable. Yeah.
And at least for UXP, we have been making it a crypto agile piece of software. Means that we've already, for some countries, had to replace cryptography in it for something different. Like in Ukraine, it uses a local standard. So the software already knows how to adapt to different cryptography solutions. Fair enough, but okay. You already started talking about digital identity, but Estonia has several versions of digital identity, and so does the rest of the world. So, the ID cards we talked about. Today we have these plastic cards. People use it to vote, to use online services, and there the pre-quantum keys are on the chips. So someday there will be post-quantum versions of the chips, and then everybody will get upgrades when they next time go and swap them. So what's the story with like mobile phone SIM-based systems, which are sort of similar? Do they have the same problems? Or
the SIM-based systems, mobile ID, for example, will have the same problem, because mobile ID, as we use it in Estonia, is essentially using the SIM card as a key storage.
Yes.
And this the crypto algorithm support is in the hardware. So you will need to replace the hardware. You will need new mobile ID SIM essentially.
I remember that at some point when mobile ID was developed, then it originally used RSA keys, but it switched to elliptic curves.
That was the ID card case. I think mobile ID has always run on elliptic curves as far as I know in Estonia.
Was that because of the size of the signatures and messages?
Probably.
Post-quantum cryptography likely has much larger sizes.
Well, it depends. It depends. So now is the place where you need to come back to this. There is no drop-in replacement.
Right.
So there are different kinds of post-quantum algorithms with different trade-offs. So yeah, in case of elliptic curves, for example, we are used to that the keys are a few hundred bits, the cryptograms are a few hundred bits, the signatures are a few hundred bits. But now, in case of post-quantum crypto, you will need to start selecting what is more important to you. Do you want to have small signatures? You can have post-quantum crypto with very small signatures, but with very big keys, for example.
Okay.
Which may or may not be a problem for you. So if you it may be a problem if you need to download many public keys from key stores very often, then it might be a problem for you. But typically, how often do you do that? Well, again, depends on your application scenario, I guess.
Yeah. So, and the next part then is systems that don't use hardware. Like again, in the Baltics we have this smart ID system based on Cybernetica split key technology that uses threshold cryptography. And there I understand that we are still trying to figure out how to do threshold post-quantum.
The split key is a very interesting case. Namely, in some sense, we are very lucky that we do have the split key in the first place.
Okay.
Because it is using a very specific property of the RSA crypto system. And thanks to that very specific property, it is possible to split the signature key into several parts and to give several parts as signatures and then combine these to form one signature that looks exactly like a standard RSA signature.
Yes.
So that's but this is what's called a homomorphic property. And unfortunately, the post-quantum signature algorithms do not provide such a property out of the box. NIST did not procure for this because this is a pretty obscure feature in the worldwide view of things. So they wanted something that would run easily on smart cards or something like that, but not necessarily in this sort of a split fashion.
Well, the elegance in Smart ID that we use a lot in Estonia these days is that you don't have to trust a single device. You don't have to trust a single chip. We had the experience in Estonian ID card that we trusted a single chip. It was certified. However, key generation was slightly flawed. And then we had a security crisis with all our ID cards. Well, it doesn't mean that software is never flawed, but it also means that the system is more open and more auditable. So Smart ID and split key are in that sense interesting that they can use trusted hardware to secure the transactions, but it's not that they rely on it solely for key protection. So in that sense, it's something that we're working on. So our researchers are publishing the first papers on it and running prototypes. So this is an ongoing
I would say we know how to do this in principle. Again, the question is performance.
Yes, performance.
So how long does it take? How many round trips you would need for this data to run back and forth before you can produce this standard looking signature, for example?
And if you wanted this to be certified and used in a regulatory or legal setting like we are in Estonia, then it has to be certified, it has to be trustworthy, and there are still some ways to go towards that. Which sort of brings us to one of our final topics, which is why did you start looking at post-quantum cryptography in the first place? Do you know? Do you remember? What was the reason? Was it just interesting, or?
I guess in the first it was just an interest, yes. Well, I looked around what was happening in our company. I saw that like many of our products are using crypto, obviously, have been for decades. And in like around 2010, 2015, it became apparent that this quantum thing is becoming big. It was already known for a few years that NIST is going to announce a competition. So 2016, by no means it was a surprise. It was already well known that NIST is preparing it for a few years. So as a representative of a company whose sales depend on crypto-heavy products, I thought it might be a good idea to get ready for this time.
So, and where has this taken you for now? You've been doing it for a while, so what are we doing now?
Yes, so yeah, my own research topic, my main research topic is electronic voting, which obviously also uses cryptography on very many levels. So of course we will ask how easy it would be to transition the system to post-quantum crypto. So do you want me to answer this question?
No, I do. It would be very great because if I start thinking of what is there currently in the Estonian online voting system, there's zero knowledge, there's homomorphic cryptography.
Okay. Let me take it. So yes, we are using crypto in many different components, but luckily these components are pretty easily separable. So we are making use of national EID. For authentication and signatures. And this is a place where we can say that whenever Estonian state is ready with their post-quantum EID, we will just use it. Perfect, so we're not using it in any obscure functionality. No, we're just using it as it is. So that's a good part. The specific part is vote encryption. So we are using vote encryption, very specific kind of it, to allow for very fancy functionality, exactly for certain zero-knowledge proofs of correct encryption, for example, for mixing the cryptograms for added privacy, We will perhaps have at some point also zero-knowledge proof-based individual verification protocol. All of these are possible because of very specific properties of the encryption that we're using. And again, NIST public key encryption, well, NIST didn't even procure public key encryption, they only procured public key exchange.
Yes.
So NIST algorithms are with high probability not usable for our purposes, which means we need to develop something of our own. But luckily, I come back to this ecosystem topic. So luckily, this vote encryption is only confined within the ecosystem of e-voting, which means, again, we can update it pretty easily. So we don't even need contingency in the sense that we are not running elections like every day.
Yes.
We are running it once a year or something like that. We have time to prepare. We have time to release a completely new version of software, both on server side and on the client side. And once we do that, we will have post-quantum support. So in this sense, it's easy. I would say it's easier to transition that quite a few of the other examples.
So yes, if I take the take-home message here is then that once a government moves its digital identity platform to post-quantum, and there is a acceptable standard way for moving secure messages around with post-quantum, then the more exotic pieces that we use for verifiability of voting and for securely tallying the votes and for making sure that we can't bind a specific vote to we can't find how anyone voted also from the context, then that cryptography we are also currently converting to post-quantum.
This is a big research project, which is currently ongoing. But this is again how research works. We are improving both on the theoretical side to be able to prove the algorithms secure, and on the performance side to be able to accommodate hundreds of thousands of votes, for example. And in the foreseeable future, I'm hopeful we will be able to solve these problems. And once we do that, the transition itself is not going to be technically very complex. It's figuring out how to do this in a provable and efficient manner. This is the current challenge.
There's also the trust building. There needs to be the research community needs to have a look at the cryptography.
Sure. And we are by no means the only ones who are looking at this.
Yes.
So there are other countries who are running electronic voting in some form. And of course, they also know that they need to do something. So there are groups in Norway, groups in Spain, many groups around the world who are looking at similar things. And we are not alone in this.
That's very fortunate because, even though we are strong users of cryptography in Estonia, it's not realistic that we can build all of it needed for these new kinds of applications. Fair enough. I think we've done a great job at explaining how post-quantum cryptography will affect everyone in the world, and also those who are relying on cryptography more than an average person or a service provider. Thank you very much, Jan. This was, I think we started in a more simple fashion, then we went very technical, then we came back, and then we went very heavily technical for a moment. But in the end, what I think we can say that this is something that's happening. Even if the quantum computer isn't happening, then post-quantum cryptography seems to be happening independently.
Pretty surely.
It's pretty sure that it is going to happen to all of us. So the migration path in the next 3 to 5 to 10 years depends on what's your service is something that you need to consider. And this was brought to you by researchers and scientists around the world. And science will make you secure and hopefully as a byproduct also happy. Thank you very much and see you next time.
Thank you for inviting me.